Welcome back to Kumba Hineni, a podcast on intersectionality. More than skin deep, I'm your host, Enzi. And this week, I'm kind of really excited about our conversation. We are going to talk a little bit about Black Futures Month. And Graie Hagens is here with me today. Welcome, Graie.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm really excited. So, by the time this airs, it will be after the fact. But Saturday, I turned 39. And been really doing a lot of thinking. I honestly didn't think I would be here at 39. I don't believe I thought I would make it past 19. And so in many ways, this is my 21st. It's 21 years past the time that I saw myself here. And just really thinking about and the reminder that the messages given about uh, the inability to foresee or to think about the future of Black men, and really thinking about the 90s and how the message was very clear that by the time a person was 18, they'll be either dead or in jail as Black men. And so really realizing that some of the narratives that I was given was that we won't be here. And even at that time, as a identifying as a Black woman, a Black girl, still was hard to see myself beyond um, beyond that. And yes, I imagine growing up in an environment are where there's violence and where there's bullets and different things also impact the way in which we foresee our trajectory. And we know that it is very hard for anyone to imagine and to vision uh, Black men thriving. Um, are what I say, it's um, just really fascinating and also I don't want to say no, it is kind of sad and always curious of what does that mean. And I before we get going, really the biggest thing is that I'm just mindful is that out of all the messages, all the stories being told and being given, and being mindful that for all reasons, many reasons, we shouldn't be here, and yet I'm still here and alive.
Baruch Hashem. It's a blessed early happy birthday. And by the time this actually airs and folks get a chance to listen, I hope that they'll be sending you some belated happy birthdays as well. I know I speak for all the people to say it's such a blessing that you've been with us for this whole 39 years, this whole 21 years past that moment. You know, earlier when we were kind of checking in preparation, the first thing that came to mind when you said that was that old Ye West line. Wasn't supposed to make it past 25. Joke's on you, he's still alive. Throw your hands up in the sky, because we don't care what people say. And I I think that most immediately came to me. And I think I felt that because I remember that sense of that, 18 and it was done. There was no, what was life supposed to be beyond that? I didn't grow up with a lot of adult models of uh, healthy adulthood beyond 18. I definitely went to schools hearing it in school, like that there was a predestined pathway, right? And there was a pathway definitely for boys was you either dead or you're locked up, or you make it out because you rap, you play ball, you something, right?
And this is
Uh,
before this is before we had a really understanding of the prison. Actually, there was no school to prison pipeline in the same context, because prisons wasn't privatized as much. So I'm gonna stop. Go ahead. I just realized that context. So
I think that there are things about kind of language and how we understand things that have definitely changed. And it's very interesting. I think sometimes when you and get a chance to speak to each other, because there's a little bit of an age gap between the two of us. We both grew up in Missouri, but we grew up on opposite sides of the state. And yet we found our way here, right? So there's both the element first of bruh, who would have imagined that we would be us right now is a thing I think a lot about. First and foremost, just the blessedness that we are here, and knowing how much of us being here really is pure imagination. That there was not a playbook to be Jewish, Black, trans folks who grew up, in Black hood ass communities in Missouri. It's
I
just,
mean, and that's the thing, right? Like the only time anyone ever said anything about my future to me that I distinctively remembered is everyone assumed I was going to grow up to be this um, church woman with, just a very devout church woman, and that's absolutely not the reality.
I was a little smart girl growing up, and that included in high school. And so for me, I was one of those kids that a lot of like collective hope sometimes was put into, and a lot of exceptionalizing happened around me, right? I got away with a lot of stuff, but there was also a sense of my ability to do well was supposed to bring other people up, right? And so for me, there was always a sense of my future was tied up with other people's in a way. Um, and yet at the same time, there was that exceptionalizing piece, right? That both made it clear to me what was the kind of future expectations of Black folks in general, and then the ways in which I was supposed to keep those things from happening, right? And so I went to a high school where I don't remember the exact graduation rates, right? But I was on the upper end of my class, and a lot of kind of interest and pressure for me in applying for colleges. And I was pretty resistant to that because for me, I didn't know any adults who went to college. The only adults I know who went to college were teachers. And funnily enough, at that point, I was very clear I did not want to be an educator. And again, imagination, right? Um, but on the other side of that was kind of always just what the other pathway was, right? Was that if I wasn't going to college, well, then there was an expectation of this is going to be your life outcome, right? You are going to have a bunch of babies, ideas about that I would have children with multiple people, that I would be reliant on state support, that I would be a drain on society in those kind of ways, right? I grew up with many of those kind of tropes and frames for the possibility and pathways for Black women's lives. And in both of those cases, and I'm speaking in a very like kind of, cis heteronormative framework, because also that's what we grew up in, and our existence is imagining out of that.
Especially from the Bible Belt, right? Like
Mhm.
that is just naming that Bible Belt mentality, particularly 90s, early 2000s. And thank you for reminding me of the age gap because it's
Mhm.
slight, but also it shifts things a little bit.
Yes, right. But I think so much about, even, kind of with limited ideas about gender and sexuality, that ultimately those ideas feed into what we think about the possibility of Black families, right? And Black futures, and the health and safety and security and love and joy of Black people and Black communities. And so I think a lot about growing up in a context in which we were kind of shown a model of and a barrage of images that were reinforced in all kinds of ways that Black men and Black masculine folks, right, would either had a pathway of either being in prison or dead, right, and that came with a life of unavoidable violence, that came with a life of criminality, right? That came with a life of needing other people to be protected from Black men, including Black families and Black women and Black children. And I'm not saying any of this to say that there's not also the very real reality of needing protection from from Black men as well, right? But I'm talking about a framework of what was and was not possible for our lives, right? And those kind of models of Black womanhood and Black femininity, right? That said that there was again going to be a reliance on other people, right? That there was a lack of grace and actual attention to care, but that there was a kind of schemishness, right? And that Black men and all men also needed a certain kind of protection from Black women, because they would be trying to, come at you, take something from you all the time, right? And that these were not conducive things for an idea of families that could actually thrive. The sense of like you're just doomed.
I mean, honestly, for me, if I stop and think about the images on TV at that time, and shows, the most positive image of a black man for me, and many people probably disagree, but was the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and Will, uh, and perhaps it's because his background was closer to uh, what folks experienced, or not folks, what folks around me and what I saw as realistic, and it was exceptional, right? Like it wasn't, um, it wasn't. We very seldom saw things as the norm. I'm thinking of Boys in the Hood. And that's because y'all folks, if you know me, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and here's the connection. One of the companions, Adric, dies saving the universe, dies saving the Earth, not the universe, the Earth. He is what caused the meteorites in the show, caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. And whenever he dies, I cry, I bawl. And so all week I've been thinking about Boys in the Hood, because the scene when Ricky dies, I don't care. I cry my eyes out every freaking time. Um, but thinking about Boys in the Hood and thinking about the messages and how many people saw these two different stories of Boys in the Hood, and I can't. Why is my mind going blank? The main character, what was his name?
You look for Trey.
Yeah, it's Trey. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, Many people would talk about his character as really more exceptional and really more uh, unique. And what I wanted to see is more of that character, because I thought that was more realistic, and that character showed us a little bit more of possibility, is what I will say, right? The one that even as a child, and as I'm thinking, I'm like, oh no, actually they all reinforce that, right? Like you have the unique one, but even with Will Smith, everything he did was juvenile, and um,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Mhm. It I it's incredibly hard to grow up when you spend your life watching yourself die. Right. And I think about media and the stories, right? And there was that tension of our art reflecting what so many of our communities and our lives actually looked like. And so this era of film, right, in some ways I was trying to reflect back similarly how hip hop and rap was reflecting back what life looked like for many of us, and also the kind of stretching of imagination of those things, right? The ability to imagine oneself of suddenly in Bel Air, right? Like in the hills, in a mansion. Um, and think about how much art and possibility just comes out of even just that imagining against that backdrop of our death. And I think a lot about, the past couple of weeks, or even just the past few days, on Friday, I'm still kind of processing my day on Friday. I heard the news about the body cam footage was going to be released in Memphis about midday. And I happened to be in Washington, D.C., and I decided that I was going to spend the day um, at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I hadn't been before, and it felt like I don't know. I was like, there's something I need to be close to. Um, Both that's because the predictability, the cycle, right? The sense now, not just of what it means to be in the United States and an American, but also what does it mean to be in movement building space? The kind of way that we attune around, there's another near perfect victim, and there's enough footage that it can activate maybe enough of us, and there's something about the persistence of that both the reality of the condition of this is America, but also that our movements continue to be built by our blood, by Black folks in this country finding it unacceptable that we watch, that we have to grow up watching ourselves die in that way.
I mean, that's yes, yeah. I mean, as you said that, one of the things, and I'm excited to get to the part about dreaming and the part about you know futures. And as you were speaking, I was just really thinking about what that things haven't gotten better. Is what I'm thinking about. It's um, uh, every time I think about things not getting better, I get kind of bitter, and that's just because remember I anyhow. Not gonna think about it, but like things, sometimes some things don't get better, and sometimes things just get worse.
Mhm.
And what I mean is, in the '60s, all the cops had to do was harass a black kid, and that caused an uprising. By the '90s, you had to see a man get beat up on camera for us to do anything. Late '90s, no one really did much when Amadou and other folks were murdered. Beginning of the century, right? Like that was just a constant piece. But folks were out every single time. But now it's so constant that not only does it have to be caught on TV or live, sometimes it has to be caught live, but it also has to be, as you said, that perfect victim. Um, and it is the relentless piece of it. It is the what does it mean to withdraw and go into all that is beauty, um, and all that is, and sometimes beauty is connected with pain, but all that is art, and wonderful about African Americans and about Black Americans, is I find that beautiful. Uh, I find it amazing and beautiful. I think about the things in our heritage, the things as African descendants of slaves that our ancestors did for freedom, and many of that was art. Many of it was cornrows and music and all these things that some folks may look at as extra or as excess or um, in addition to. But those were the things that brought us our freedom and our liberation, and just really grateful that not not grateful that our people went through that. Let me be really clear with that stuff. And I'm grateful that the ability to develop beauty out of it, um, and the ability to try and create a dream and try to say, what does it mean to turn this nightmare into something possible?
And I think that is that part, right? For me, it was I'm gonna spend my day at this museum, knowing that by the time I left, the body cam footage would probably be going around the internet, cities across the country. You know, police would be preparing for some level of civil unrest. Organizers and movement folks would be figuring out how to take to the street and keep our people safe and figure out how to move us forward. And I was like, I've been at that moment before. And it's hard when you're in the moment always to believe in better and not fall back into the bitter. And I think there was something about wanting to connect with we've been at this for a long time. I'm in a lineage. I'm choosing to be a part of a forward moving people. And I wanted to be both close with that lineage, but also there was something about the comfort of knowing though, like we've been at this for a long time. You know, and I went into the museum, and for folks who may not have been there before, the way it's structured is you kind of go to the lower levels. It's kind of the beginning of the timeline, and as you move your way up, you move forward in time. And it was both heartbreaking in that at every single level, was state-based and state-sanctioned violence against Black people at every single level, right? Including the current level. You go from the bottom of the theft of human beings, the kidnapping of human beings from the continent of Africa, all the way up to the top level where there's this gorgeous painting of Breonna Taylor and a timeline of her life that is written by her mother with such like gentle tenderness for her child. And it's every single level. And I couldn't, the only section of the entire museum I had to walk away from was the Emmett Till section. And it was
I was
the,
about to say that there are too many mothers who've had to look back at Emmett Till's mom. That's literally what I was about to say.
yes. But also that she made that decision that we have to look at her child, that America have to look at her child and what has become acceptable, what we allow to happen, what we actively live with. That she gave that to us that so that something might change. And to keep going up the levels of that museum and hold that, it don't feel like a whole lot's changed. And at every single level of the museum, it is Black folks demand that America be as free as she claims to be. That we the people actually mean we the people. That this country that made us a people protect us. At every single level was Black folks like really making freedom real in this country. Through art and culture and song, and also through movement building, through fighting. The deep love of this country and democratic possibility also.
And that's the thing I'm actually read a poem for you all,
Please.
which is "I Too Sing America" by none other ancestor Langston Hughes. It's one of my favorite poems, and I'm gonna share it, and then Granny, I know you have a lot of stuff to say, so but all right, I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to the eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll say how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. I, and I'm gonna, let you speak. I just hold that so much though, um, which makes sense coming from the same person who says what happens to a dream deferred, because holding the reality that how much of the ability to envision a time where Black folks didn't have to go through the back door for Langston Hughes. It, it's incredible. And Gray.
You know, I'm a big Langston Hughes fan. My mother gave me the name Langston, and you know, some of it is finding right place in lineage, right? Oh, and that's what I remember being at the museum and coming around the corner, and that piece is big on the wall towards the end of it, and I was like, you know what? You know, you're in a good immersive experience when you get to encounter yourself in some way. So it it was
So I do want to say this because folks, I just realized I made an assumption that folks knew the era in which Langston Hughes was here. Um, he was born in 1901, and so the thinking about the height of the Harlem Renaissance and these things, and so just naming that 1901, he died, I believe, in 1967. There was no ability to eat out there is no way of envisioning that. That's I just need to name that.
there's no way of envisioning that, and it takes me right back to kind of the idea of imagining us, there was like no way, like an imagine and envision, like that there would be some little person named Langston who was black and Jewish and trans, like that, right? And that could be not a secret part of my life, not a hidden part or held in shame part of my life, right? That actually there was possibility for me to live publicly in that way. And don't get me wrong, that living publicly in that way does not always come safely or securely or feel great. But there is the actual possibility, right? And I think about that. And again, like being in that space, really thinking about like, kind of the way for each generation of us is to, carry on the torch, is to move that one space closer to what we are meant for, which is, I believe, fully to be free. I believe that as a Jewish person, I believe that as a Black person, I believe that as a trans person, I believe that as an American. Like we supposed to be free.
We just got to get there somehow. Which, uh, spoiler alert, part of the reason why we can't get there is because we keep thinking we could get to freedom within ourselves, or one of us could be free while others are in captivity. And it's never going to happen. As long as one group is in captivity, then none of us can. I'm not going to quote MLK. Go ahead.
All right. We don't, I think the way that's coming up for me a lot right now, so many dynamics about um the choices that are put before us and our capacity to choose right now. And I think about kind of circle back to our earlier part of our conversation is, so much of the story that I grew up with and the framework that I grew up with about Black men and Black women, right? Like kind of ultimately also structured people to be against one another. That the idea of finding common destiny was kind of fantastical in some ways, right? That it was in and of itself a big hurdle and a big project. Um, and I think about the ways that's coming up right now, right? Some of the commentary about somehow, right, police officers beating a man to death is the fault of single Black mothers, which the logic there I can't possibly understand. But I bring it up because again, it's another moment of the way that both like systems have structured certain kinds of roles for us, and have structured certain kind of narrative playbooks for us, and how easy it is to pull on those things in ways that distract us from five police officers, where the very clear accountability actually should be um, targeted and took a man's life, right? But I also watch the ways in which then in Florida right now, you also see attempts to create felony charges for activities such as littering someone's yard with anti-Semitic hate speech flyers and things, right? So pulling on tactics that actually will increase the carceral system as a way and believing that'll keep us safer. And so just watching all these different ways that we reach for either narratives that casually demonize someone else when we're feeling targeted or insecure in our position or is convenient, but also the ways in which we expose ourselves around who do we really value? Who are the people who we consider to be reflective of us? And how do we believe that we also deal with the problems that we're facing right now? I think a lot of times about we're about to or we are in one of my favorite parts of the Torah right now. It includes just so many, I feel like, instructive moments for right now, including the moment of we are expelled from Mitzrayim, we're expelled from the narrow place. And it says not just the Hebrews, but this mixed multitude of us, this whole set of people who now have found their way out of a narrow place into the wideness and the vastness of the desert and have to figure out how to move forward. And the Torah says that God purposely does not take us over the land, but takes us to the sea, knowing that if we went over the land, we would become afraid and we would turn back. And so, like, immediately in this position of actually there is no backwards to go. And so, whatever are the stories we might have had about each other, whatever stories have been structured for us that tell us this is the playbook of the options of our life, that we shouldn't expect to live beyond 25, that dreams of 36 are a stretch, that thriving families, however we may want to make them, whether they are in cis hetero, child producing couples, or if they're wildly exaggerant of that. Like, we should be able to live in those things, but we gotta let go of and not carry forward with us the things that like made narrowness. And then we have this moment to be at the sea where we either have to decide like to step forward and like really understand backwards is not a place that we can go. And for me, that has meant a lot in terms of having to hold and understand the narrowness of construct that I've come out of, and both the rightfulness of the project of reimagining myself.
I, you know, it's fascinating, right, to think about what does it mean to be at the sea and needing to make a decision, uh, as well as the importance for me, going a little step further, but the importance of having someone willing to lead and someone willing to take. And I don't mean lead in the way that Moses and Aaron led. Um, I mean willing to take the risk when no one else is willing to take that risk. Willing to say, I'm going to put my body on the line, and hopefully, hopefully the sea is going to cross. But I'm still putting my body on the line because um, Knocksham could have not, and where would we be? Someone probably would have done it eventually, but I I don't know it. And just a reminder for me, and I mean, and I suppose we can look throughout the history of African American descendants of slaves, um, however we want to look at, whether it's um, Harriet Tubman or whomever it is, the need to make yourself a target in some ways. Um, I don't want to. The need to put yourself on the line for freedom for your people. Um, Martin Luther King knew. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew that he um, was putting himself um, on the line. Malcolm X knew that, especially as he began to uh, transform in many ways, uh, the importance of doing that, and also that doesn't always mean physical. I'm not necessarily saying that, but just the um, the reminder of that for me is hopeful, in many ways, because we know that it paid off, right? We know that Naksham didn't, at least the story we have, didn't become didn't get overcome by the waves, right? We know that um, even though things don't always get better, and even though things, as we were talking about, has gotten worse, we also know that I graduated from a predominantly white college. I know that I there are things that I have and that I'm able to do because of them.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking while you were talking, I was like, we know that we got free, right? We so know that we got free that every single year, right, we engage in a whole process of transformative ritual of understanding ourselves as going from a people in bondage to a people in freedom, right? We have the Passover Seder every year. We know we are so free that we lean back and while we take our food and our drink, right? And I think about
I just was saying, likewise, we have Juneteenth, right? Like, in the same notion saying that we know that we're free because we celebrate our freedom.
Mhm. Mhm. And there's something about that, right? Of remembering where we are in the wave, right? That the systems are still also evolving and learning how to continue to pull itself forward as well. And we are learning and evolving right alongside with it. And with that comes also all the choice points of our learning. I mean, if we if we actually get the lesson, um, that's always if we actually get the lesson, um, then there is that new possibility that emerges for us in each new generation. I've been in a conversation with several different people over the last week about the difference between running away from something and running towards something, and how much we need to have something to run towards, whether it's a sense of some kind of promised land or some kind of future or some kind of, we need to know that there's somewhere that we're going, that there's somewhere that's going to be freer and safer and bigger and more beautiful, more bountiful, somewhere that actually is for us. And I've been having this conversation with a few different friends, and a friend of mine sent a clip back, and it was a part of the documentary that was done sometime in the last couple of years about Toni Morrison. And the clip was kind of an encouragement to read her work every few years. And there's a quote in there about a poet, Sonia Sanchez, that I keep sitting with about reimagining ourselves in this American landscape. And then the reimagining means it can be whatever we are imagining. And it just again took me back to um, the power of us, right? To make the possibility of this place bigger and more beautiful and more tangible. And we're kind of at that place in history and human destruction where hope feels sometimes really far off. And I think the destruction feels a lot closer at our doors, especially right now. I mean, between kind of climate change and the impacts of weather systems. I mean, I got back to Texas the other night and it's freezing. It ice rained for about 90 minutes this morning, to the realities of gun violence right now in the United States. I mean, right at this moment, there have been more mass shootings than there have been days in the year 2023. And I say mass shootings, right? That's when more than 4 people are shot at a time. That's not counting all the other kinds of gun violence that happen. Um, you got cities like LAPD. There have been 3 officer related deaths in the city of Los Angeles in 2023 alone. We're just watching a level that I feels scary, to be honest. Right? I don't even know what other word. I don't need to. I don't need to be any more buck to say it feels scary. But the reminder of it's our right and our role to reimagine ourselves on this American landscape for me was so deeply re-grounding. To sit with, like, the landscape is the landscape, right? There was a generation that had to imagine ourselves outside of the landscape of slavery and outside the landscape of Jim Crow and outside the landscape of legal segregation and outside the landscape of the early days of, and like, and so we are in our right place in that way of reimagining. And so there becomes so much more possibility when we start to think about, like, we get to reimagine ourselves as we always have done on this American landscape. And as it changes, we change with it. And I would say, as it changes, we change it.
No, yeah, that's real, and it makes it makes a lot of sense, and just uh, it has me thinking about a whole lot of different things. One of the things that uh, I love Sir David Attenborough. I believe he's 97 by this time. Uh, there's a new series on I think it's on BBC America, and it's the Frozen World Tour or something like that. for the first time, they actually showed a huge chunk of an iceberg as it fell off. And the massive scale of it was huge. And it was terrifying to think about what's happening to our planet. And seeing that, my hope of folks seeing that is the realization that we have no choice now. We have to dream and we have to think of what another future and another world is because there's um we've lost too much to get everything back. It's just yeah. You know, as we're thinking about future, one of the things that I want to think about or just name is you know, we started off saying this. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Anyhow, it's Black Futures Month, y'all. Um, and really, if you feel like it, Grant, we'd love for you to just share quickly. I know that there might be folks curious on why do we say Black Futures Month, and as you think about that, I always think about this concept and the reality of where we're going and the need to know that. And one of my favorite, I have a lot of favorite Doctor Who quotes, y'all. That's just gonna be whatever. Um, but the Doctor and Romana too, when they were leaving somewhere, someone asked where you're going, and they said, "Well, in order to know where we're going, we have to figure out where we've come from." And then they said, "Well, where have you been?" And he said, "I don't know." And so like the thinking of like they didn't know because they just traveled wherever. And though thinking about like how our past is very much connected with our future, and how it's all bound.
Oh man. So Black Futures Month is kind of an imagining that has come out of the movement for Black Lives, starting last year. So they kind of put out this framework and this vision of thinking, considering and kind of celebrating Black radical history in a forward-facing way, and as an opportunity to dream and imagine a world in which we're all free and self-determined, and to map and illustrate a world in which we all Black lives matter. And they particularly are attentive and centering Black queer and trans feminist perspectives, and really recognizing, of course, that Black queer and trans people have been at the forefront, have been long dreaming and envisioning and expanding, not just for our movements, but for our people, what we can be. And this possibility of really being in an affirmative and celebratory space, and knowing that that is going to really be some of the secret sauce to get into that place where all Black lives are free. And I think, again, just to come back full circle of that blessing to be here with you as you're coming into almost 39 years old. You know, we also have come through a period where there's been a lot of conversation about kind of the life expectancy for trans folks in this country and the life expectancy for Black trans folks. And so thinking about just, you know, growing up in a narrowness that kind of did not even have imagination or space or language for us as we are, and that the pathways that it gave for us were even narrower, and neither of them meant kind of full, thriving, possible lives for us at 39. And yet here we be.
Here we are, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. So it's it is just wonderful. I it's we could talk for a very long time, which is what I absolutely love. And it is getting dark here. It's probably getting dark there too. Um, and so I'm. It's still, you know, I believe that there's probably still one more episode left in this month, and so we'll probably, hopefully, have some more stuff to say. And um, I'm excited about Black Futures Month, and would encourage folks to really think about some of the stuff like Grace said, um, or look into Black Futures Month more if you want to do that as well. And again, Gray, I really always enjoy having you on. Thank you so much um, for coming. Do you have anything you want to end with or anything?
Actually, I want to share. I've been sitting with in this parsha as well. Also features the Micha Mocha, the song at the sea
Mm.
that we sing. Right, we get through this like kind of treacherous journey into the other side, and what do? But we pause for a moment and we sing. We sing a song of thankfulness, but I actually want to offer an alternative song, but in that spirit. And it's given to us. I don't know the lineage of the song, but the words are attributed to Rebbe Nachman. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the one thing is to have no fear at all, have no fear at all. It's to be brave, cross the bridge, be together, live forward. We are possible.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all again for listening to Kumba Hineni, a podcast on intersectionality more than skin deep. Until next time, this is Enzi. Bye. Kumba Hineni, a podcast on intersectionality more than just skin deep, is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. You can email the show at podcast@tcjewfolk.com. For more information, go to tcjewfolk.com/podcast.